shattered glass on the marble floor, my drawing torn to pieces. Michael shouting words that cut deeper than the pieces scattered on the floor. "Get out of my house! Now!" I tremble as I grab my cell phone and wallet. 12 years of marriage, reduced to a burst of rage because I questioned his financial decisions. I can't even cry. I just grab my purse and head out the door, ignoring his shouts about my incompetence and how I'm a financial burden. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. The crumpled brown envelope in my purse feels like it weighs a ton. It arrived this morning. Rachel Wilson, subject, Elizabeth Johnson's estate. I didn't have time to open it before Michael started arguing about the credit card statement. I drive aimlessly through the streets of Seattle, tears finally streaming down. My phone rings. It's Michael. I reject the call. It rings again. I turn it off. I park at a gas station and finally open the envelope. I read it 3 times to be sure there was no mistake. $3.4 million in liquid assets. A seaside property in Crescent Bay valued at $1.7 million. A hysterical laugh escapes my lips. The Aunt Michael, always called the hopeless old eccentric, just turned me into a millionaire. The hotel room is impersonal, but quiet. After a long shower, I sit on the bed and reread the inheritance letter. My Aunt Elizabeth, the family rebel, as my mother used to call her, passed away 3 weeks ago. I couldn't even go to the funeral because Michael said it was a waste of money. I grab my sketch pad and start doodling like I always do when I need to think. My hand draws on its own, a small woman inside a golden cage. I stare at the drawing as memories flash by. Michael checking how much I spent on art supplies. Michael canceling my credit card without warning. Michael saying that my drawings are cute, but they don't pay the bills. Michael convincing me to quit my job at the Deep publishing house 4 years ago. Michael deciding how much I can spend on gifts for my family. With every memory, the reality becomes clearer. It's not just a husband stressed from work, it's a pattern. A system meticulously built to keep me dependent, isolated, and doubting my own perceptions. I open my email and find 3 new messages from Michael. "Rachel, you're being childish. Your mother is worried. Call her. If you don't come back soon, I'll cancel your cell phone." The law firm in downtown Seattle has a minimalist decor. Samantha Taylor isn't what I expected. Short blue hair, tattoos on her arms, floral patterned flats under a sharp suit. "Your aunt talked about you a lot," she says as she leads me into her office. "Especially about your talent." I haven't been drawing much in the past few years, I confess. Elizabeth suspected that. Samantha hands me a second envelope. "She left this for you specifically." Inside, a handwritten letter in Aunt Elizabeth's elegant script. "Dear Rachel, if you're reading this, I've finally moved on to my next adventure. I hope the money brings you freedom, no more cages. I recognize the signs because I've been there. Remember, your art is not just a hobby, it's your voice, and no one should silence it. With eternal love, Elizabeth." Tears stream down my face. "She asked me to personally handle your case," Samantha explains. "I have experience with women in complex situations." "He's going to try and get everything," I say between sobs. "That's why you need to act fast," Samantha says as she grabs a folder. "I've already prepared documents to protect your assets, and more importantly, to protect you. 3 days in the hotel and the pressure mounts." Michael blocked our joint card and froze our shared bank account. My mother calls, clearly having heard only his version of the story. "Dear, marriages have ups and downs. Michael is devastated. He said you just left without explanation." "Mom, he kicked me out." Threw a sculpture at the wall just inches from my head. Silence on the other end. "Well, you know how men get when they're stressed." A text message arrives while I'm still on the phone. If you don't come back by tomorrow, I'll call the police, saying you took confidential company documents. Think about your career. I show the message to Samantha during our next meeting. Classic intimidation tactics, she observes. The good news: we have enough evidence of emotional and financial abuse for a restraining order. I'm scared too. Confront him, I admit. That's why you won't do it alone, Samantha assures me. Michael finds out about the inheritance. Suddenly, the calls become sweet and conciliatory. Love, we can work this out. I was stressed at work. You know how dedicated I am to us. We can use that money to finally make our dreams come true. His dreams, his plans, his control. On the 5th day, I gather my courage and call my sister Madison. Finally, she exclaims, I've been waiting years for you to get out of that toxic relationship. Was it that obvious? I ask, surprised. Rachel, he isolated you from all of us. Remember? Last Christmas. You could barely decide what to eat without looking to him first. The pain of that truce hits me like a punch. Madison offers to come immediately from Portland. I also call Sophia, my best friend from before the marriage. Oh my God, Rachel! I thought I'd lost you forever. I'll be there in 2 hours. Samantha introduces me to Jennifer Brown, an expert in high-conflict divorces. First step, document everything, Jennifer instructs. Messages, emails, financial records, and we need to secure your belongings, especially your drawings and personal documents. He'll never let you go. That's why we'll be accompanied by the police, Jennifer explains, and your friends will be there as witnesses. As we organize the plan, I realize I'm no longer alone. For the first time in years, I have a team by my side, people who see my value beyond what I can offer Michael. That night, I draw again, the same woman in the cage, but now with a small opening in the door, and outside, hands extended to help her. The sun hadn't even risen when we met in the parking lot near the house. Madison and Sophia arrived together, carrying empty boxes in the trunks. Jennifer adjusted her briefcase while Samantha checked the final documents. 2 police cruisers parked discreetly. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. Remember, Jennifer said, don't react to his provocations. We're here only to collect your personal items. Any discussion about the divorce or properties will happen later, with the lawyers present. Our 5 silhouettes walked along the sidewalk of the house I had shared with Michael for 10 years. Every step felt heavy. With trembling hands, I used my key for the last time. Michael was in the living room, perfectly dressed at 7:15 in the morning, as if he was waiting for us. His face was a mask of carefully maintained calm, but I noticed his jaw clenching, a sign of repressed fury. Officers, he greeted the police with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I don't understand the need for this entourage. Rachel could have just asked for her things. Mr. Wilson, the older officer began, we're here only to ensure everything goes peacefully. Michael glared at me. Always so dramatic, right? Turning a simple disagreement into a spectacle. Sophia stepped forward, but Jennifer stopped her with a subtle gesture. Let's just grab what I need and leave, I said, surprised by the firmness in my voice. I started in the office where I kept my art supplies and original sketches. Madison helped me pack brushes, paints, and notebooks. Sophia stayed behind to photograph the state of every room as we went in. You really think you'll be able to support yourself with these doodles? Michael appeared in the doorway, watching as I carefully packed up my work. Without me, you're nothing. I kept packing silently, Aunt Elizabeth's words echoing louder than his provocations. Jennifer remained by my side, taking notes. In the bedroom, Michael followed my every move like a hawk. Those jewels were my gifts, he protested when I picked up a box from the drawer. Gifts belong to the person who receives them, Mr. Wilson, Jennifer interjected. We're recording everything that's being taken. I found my family album hidden at the back of the closet. I hadn't seen it in years. Michael had said it was saving space. That purse cost a fortune, he pointed out, while Madison placed it in a box. You never appreciated what I did for you. How do we block her access to the bank accounts? Sophia murmured quietly. Michael's face hardened. If it were just the two of us like so many times before, I would have apologized immediately. Instead, I kept packing, feeling his anger rise. When we reached my old trunk of memories, Michael blocked the way. This stays. It was a gift from my mother for us. Actually, Samantha checked the document. This trunk was a gift from Aunt Elizabeth on your second wedding anniversary, wasn't it, Rachel? I nodded, watching Michael's face contort. Elizabeth? Sure. He practically spat the name. The crazy old lady finally got what she wanted, always trying to turn you against me. For a moment, everyone froze. It was the first sign that he knew about the inheritance. How did you find out about my aunt? I asked. Do you think I'm stupid? Our accountant called me. A suspicious transfer to a new account in your name? It wasn't hard to find out. Mr. Wilson, the officer intervened. Let's keep the conversation civil. Michael's phone rang. He answered and stepped away, but not before I saw panic in his eyes. Problems at work, probably. We finished packing everything in less than 2 hours. When the last of my items were loaded into the police cars and vans, Michael blocked the exit door. You'll be crawling back when the money runs out, he said, his voice dangerously low. And when that happens, I'll be sure to remind you of this moment. Madison stepped forward. You won't need him. Ever again. Michael laughed, a cold sound I'd known for years, filled with disdain. She won't last a week without me. Who's going to validate your childish sketches? Who's going to manage the money before you blow it all on bright paints? Something inside me broke. Not out of pain, but with crystal clear clarity. I'm going to do all that, Michael, and more. Because I never needed your validation. I was just convinced I did. When we left through the door, I felt the weight of his gaze on my back. But for the first time in 12 years, I didn't turn to check if he approved. The house in Crescent Bay looked like something from a dream I never knew I had. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened to the Pacific, with waves crashing on the rocks below. Natural light filled every room. Aunt Elizabeth had left only a few pieces of furniture, just the essentials, plus an old easel strategically placed in front of the most stunning view. I spent the first week in that space just existing, sleeping when I was tired, eating when I was hungry, crying when the emotions overflowed. Michael's messages faded when his lawyers realized I had proper legal protection. On the 10th day, I woke up before dawn, as if something was calling me. I walked over to the easel that hadn't been touched yet and removed the cloth that covered it. A note fell to the floor, in Aunt Elizabeth's handwriting. The ocean never apologizes for its strength, nor should you. I grabbed a piece of charcoal and began to draw without thinking. Furious lines, deep shadows. Hours later, I looked at what I had created. A woman with her back turned toward a storm, hair blown by the wind, staring at a clear horizon. It wasn't technically perfect, but it held a truce that made me tremble. Sophia came to visit toward the end of that week, bringing Thai food and stories we'd lost over years of distance. Remember when we used to draw together in college? She asked, flipping through my new sketches. You were always the best among us. Michael used to say it was just a teenage hobby, I remarked, tasting the sting of his old words. And what do you think now? The question lingered as we stared out the window at the sea. I think it's my voice, I finally answered, one I had been silencing for too long. In the following weeks, I established my own routine for the first time in over a decade. I woke up with the sunrise, walked on the beach, then dedicated hours to drawing. I started a series I internally called Liberation. images that told my journey without words. A woman inside a house of mirrors, where each reflection showed only what others wanted to see. Feminine hands holding a caged bird, the door open, the moment of decision. A tree growing through the cracks of a concrete wall. Madison visited on weekends, bringing plants for my makeshift garden on the balcony. "You're different," she observed one day while we planted lavender. "Your voice doesn't fade at the end of your sentences anymore, like it's asking for permission to have an opinion." I laughed, surprised by the accuracy of her observation. I guess I'm relearning who I am without someone else defining my outlines. On one particularly clear afternoon, I received an unexpected call from my mother. "Your father went out fishing," she said, with an unusual tone of hesitation in her voice. I was wondering, could I visit for a few days? The tension between us after I left Michael's house had been palpable. She insisted that I was throwing away a good marriage on a whim. "Sure, Mom, whenever you want." She arrived 3 days later with a small suitcase and heavy eyes. I showed her the house, the makeshift studio, my new work. She looked around, silently until we stopped on the balcony. "Your Aunt Elizabeth called me a week before she died," she suddenly confessed. "She said you were disappearing right before our eyes, just like I disappeared to my own mother." Her words hit me like waves. What did she mean? My mother looked at the ocean, not at me. "Your father isn't much different from Michael, just more discreet, more socially acceptable." She took a deep breath. "Seeing your drawings, your new life, Rachel, you remind me of who I could have been." That night, we drew together for the first time since my childhood. She, hesitant, me, patient. Two birds learning to fly at different speeds. As the weeks turned into months, my confidence grew along with my portfolio. I got in touch with my former editor, who was excited to see my new work. We began discussing a children's book about a little girl who discovers a secret ocean in her backyard, a story about courage that I needed to tell. One day while wandering through my new studio, I realized something fundamental. I wasn't just reclaiming my old identity. I was creating something completely new, incorporating both the pain and the freedom. Every stroke of charcoal, every brush stroke of color was an act of defiance. I dipped my brush in a vibrant red paint and signed my name in the corner of my latest canvas, not Rachel Wilson as Michael insisted on formally, but simply Rachel, the owner of her own story. Jennifer's office felt like a military operations center. Organized folders, meticulous timelines, cataloged evidence. 4 months after leaving, we were preparing for the first formal divorce hearing. Michael hired Gregory Pearson, Jennifer informed me, handing over a folder. He has a reputation for being ruthless in high-asset cases. "What does that mean for us?" I asked, rifling through documents full of legal jargon that still confused me. "It means they're going to use every tactic possible to get at your inheritance. Their main argument will be that since you were married when you received it, he's entitled to a substantial portion." Samantha, who had joined our legal team, shook her head. "That's why we documented everything. Aunt Elizabeth's letter stating that the inheritance is solely yours, the records of financial abuse, the exact date you received it versus the date of the separation." Jennifer continued, "Prepare yourself for personal attacks. They'll question your mental stability, your ability to manage your funds, even your work as an artist." "They can really do that?" Madison asked indignantly. "They can try," Jennifer smiled for the first time that morning. "But we have something they don't, the truth documented. In the days leading up to the hearing, my email overflowed with demands from Michael's legal team, access to my bank accounts for an adequate financial review, a complete inventory of the property in Crescent Bay, even my full medical records." "He's trying to wear you down," Jennifer explained when I started to panic. It's a common strategy to overwhelm the other side with requests until they give up out of exhaustion. In court, the reality was even more intense than the preparation. Michael was impeccably dressed, his face composed in a mask of serious concern. His parents sat behind him giving me icy looks. Gregory Pearson, in his tailored suit and authoritative posture, launched straight into an attack. "Your Honor, this case involves a wife who abruptly abandoned a 12-year marriage after receiving a significant inheritance. Mr. Wilson supported her artistic career for over a decade, enabling her to pursue her interests while he maintained the household financially." My hands trembled under the table. Jennifer squeezed my arm gently, our signal to take a deep breath. "Furthermore," Pearson continued, "we have evidence of significant emotional instability on Miss Wilson's part, including episodes of erratic behavior." "Objection," Jennifer calmly stood up. "The lawyer is characterizing without presenting concrete evidence." When it was our turn, Jennifer methodically presented our documentation. Bank statements showing how Michael controlled every financial aspect, text messages with veiled threats, witness statements about his controlling behavior. "Your Honor, this isn't a case of a wife abandoning a marriage. It's about a woman escaping a controlling and abusive environment." Jennifer then presented copies of emails where Michael threatened to call the police if I didn't come back. "Home." The judge studied the documents, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Pearson, how do you explain these messages?" "Words taken out of context, Your Honor. In moments of extreme emotional stress, after being left without explanation." Jennifer then introduced our most impactful evidence. Transaction records showing how Michael systematically diverted money from our joint accounts for personal investments in his startup without my knowledge or consent. Over $240,000 in 3 years. Michael's face stiffened. He did not expect us to have discovered that. "Your Honor," Jennifer concluded, "we are asking only for the protection of the assets that legitimately belong to Ms. Wilson and for a fair division of the marital property acquired during the marriage." When the hearing ended with a preliminary decision in my favor, including a financial restraining order against Michael, he approached me in the corridor. "This isn't over," he whispered, a cold smile on his lips. "I still know people who can ruin your precious budding career." Before I could respond, Samantha appeared between us. "Mr. Wilson, I suggest that any further communications be handled through proper legal channels." In the car heading back to Crescent Bay, I finally let my tears flow. Not tears of fear or sadness, but of relief and exhaustion. "Is it always like this?" I asked Jennifer. "Usually it's worse," she replied with surprising candor. "But you did extraordinarily well. You kept your composure, didn't react to provocation, and let the documents speak for themselves." "What happens now?" "Now comes the tedious part. Asset negotiations, property division, finalizing agreements. It could take months." Jennifer smiled genuinely. "But the most important thing we've already achieved, your legal and financial protection. He can no longer control you." That night, sitting in my studio bathed in moonlight, I started a new canvas. A small but determined female figure in a courtroom, surrounded by shadows yet remaining in the light. I called it Testimony. The gallery in downtown Seattle glowed with soft lights and lively conversations. My name in elegant letters at the entrance. Rebirth. Works by Rachel. No last name. A deliberate choice I made when organizing my first solo exhibition. I nervously adjusted the emerald green dress Madison helped me pick out. 6 months ago, I wouldn't have even considered wearing something so vibrant. Michael always preferred that I wear neutral colors, more appropriate, as he used to say. "You look stunning," Sophia said as she came up, offering me a glass of champagne. "And the exhibition is simply extraordinary. 3 pieces already sold, and the night has barely begun." The space displayed 24 works, arranged in chronological order. The journey started with dark and suffocating charcoal drawings depicting women trapped in increasingly confined spaces, and gradually evolved into explosive canvases of color, where the same figures found room, light, and movement. The centerpiece, positioned on the main wall, was a triptych titled Metamorphosis. 3 panels showed a woman emerging from a golden cage, her wings growing more with each panel, until the final panel where she soared over an endless ocean. It was, without a doubt, my most personal piece. "Rachel, darling, I finally found you." Margaret Chen, my former boss at the publishing house, embraced me warmly. "When I got your email about the exhibition, I marked it on my calendar immediately. Your work is impressive." "Thank you for coming," I replied, genuinely moved to reconnect with someone so important from my professional past. "Actually, I have a proposal to discuss," Margaret said with a smile as she handed me a card. "We're launching a new line of children's books about overcoming obstacles. After seeing your work today, I can't imagine a more suitable artist." The night flowed around me as I chatted with critics, collectors, and rediscovered friends. The gallery director occasionally came over to update the small red "sold" tags next to more paintings. "Your aunt would be extremely proud," Samantha commented, eyeing the crowd. Her blue hair now had streaks of purple, matching her impeccable suit. "You didn't just survive, Rachel. You're thriving." A journalist from Seattle Arts Monthly led me to a quick interview near the back of the exhibition, where I had hung my most recent works. "Your work has a powerful storytelling quality," she noted, "especially this series about liberation. Can you share what inspired this artistic journey?" I hesitated for a moment. For weeks, I had wrestled with how much of my personal story to reveal. Jennifer had advised discretion while the divorce was still unresolved, but something in the sincerity of her question made me choose the truth. "These pieces were born from a personal transformation," I began carefully. "For years, I lived in a marriage that gradually silenced my voice and my art. Each piece here represents a step in rediscovering my identity. So it's a story of survival. Of survival, yes, but more than that, of rediscovery." I pointed to a canvas where I had painted a woman reconstructing her face with shards of broken mirror. "So, when we break free from situations that diminish us, the hardest part isn't just healing the wounds, but remembering who we were before and discovering who we can be now." The answer seemed to resonate with the journalist, who frantically scribbled notes. As we finished the interview, I noticed my mother at the entrance, looking both nervous and determined. "I thought you wouldn't come," I said, embracing her. "Your father doesn't know I'm here," she whispered. "But I wouldn't miss this for anything." Together we walked through the exhibition, pausing at each work. To my surprise, she intuitively understood the metaphors, the layers of meaning that most visitors needed me to explain. "This is me too," she murmured in front of a painting called Echo, showing a woman whose reflection in the water was more vivid than herself. "I'm thinking about renting an apartment," she added abruptly. I squeezed her hand, words unnecessary. Between us. At the end of the night, when most of the guests had already left, Madison organized a small private celebration at the back of the gallery. Sophia, Jennifer, Samantha, the gallery director, and a few close friends raised glasses in a toast. "To Rachel," Madison proclaimed, "who turned her pain into beauty and reminded us that it's never too late to start over." As everyone applauded, I spotted a familiar figure through the window across the street, watching the gallery. Michael, standing under Seattle's light rain, staring intently at the place that celebrated my freedom from him. Our eyes met briefly through the glass. For a moment, I felt the old impulse to apologize, to downplay my success to suit his ego. Instead, I raised my glass in his direction, not as a challenge or triumph, but as a final acknowledgement of our shared and over. He turned away and disappeared into the rainy night. I turned back to my friends, my new life, the space I had created where my voice finally rang out in its true colors. Autumn arrived in Crescent Bay, painting the sky in golden hues that rivaled my brightest palettes. Exactly 6 months after leaving our house with nothing but a purse, I found myself on the courthouse steps, listening to Jennifer pronounce words that felt unreal. It's officially over. The judge granted all our requests. I held the divorce. Papers, surprisingly light for documents that closed 12 years of a shared life. The final settlement was even more favorable than Jennifer had originally predicted. I kept my entire inheritance, recovered the funds Michael had misappropriated, and received an equitable division of the marital assets. What made him give up fighting in the end? I asked as we walked to the parking lot. Jennifer smiled sideways. 2 factors. First, the financial evidence was irrefutable. Second, the public exposure after your exhibition changed the dynamics. Men like Michael thrive on silence and the isolation of their victims. The word victim still made me uncomfortable, though I'd learned to accept it as part of my story, not as my permanent identity. "So what are you going to do to celebrate your official freedom?" Samantha asked, joining us. "Actually, I have an important meeting this afternoon," I replied. 3 hours later, I was seated in Margaret's office at the publishing house, signing a contract to illustrate a series of 5 children's books about a little girl named Luna, who discovers magical powers in challenging situations. "The preliminary sketches are perfect," Margaret flipped through the portfolio I prepared. "I especially love how you capture Luna's expressions. So authentic, transitioning from fear to determination. Kids understand transformation more than we think," I commented, recalling how my nephews immediately connected with my new work when I took them to the exhibition. They instantly identified the character's journey without needing any explanation. On the way back to Crescent Bay, I detoured to visit the cemetery where Aunt Elizabeth was buried. I placed a small bouquet of lavender on her simple marble headstone. "I did it, Aunt," I murmured into the gentle wind. "I didn't just survive. I'm living." I left beside the flowers a framed copy of the Seattle Arts Monthly article that featured my exhibition, where my story and my art were celebrated side by side. The sun was beginning to set as I arrived home. Home. The word had taken on a new meaning. It was no longer a space where my opinions had to be approved, where every object reflected someone else's preferences. It was a sanctuary built exactly to my own desires. On the balcony, a surprise awaited me. Madison, Sophia, and my mom had organized a small celebratory dinner. The table was set with wild flowers and my favorite dishes. "How did you get in?" I asked, laughing at their proud expressions. "Your neighbor Gloria let us in," explained Sophia. "She said that any friend of Elizabeth's is her friend." During dinner, between glasses of wine and shared stories, my mother made an announcement that briefly silenced the table. I rented an apartment, not to live in permanently, just to have a space of my own for a few hours every day. Her first step, small, tentative, but hers. Later, when everyone had left, I walked barefoot along the beach. The waves lapped at the sand in a steady rhythm that had become the soundtrack of my new life. Under the stars, I reflected on what I had lost and what I had found in these 6 months. I lost a marriage, but I regained my voice. I lost the false security of dependence, but I gained the true strength of autonomy. I stopped shrinking myself, and I rediscovered the joy of claiming all the space in the world. The next morning, I woke with the first ray of sunlight and set up a new blank canvas on the easel. It was the biggest one I had ever used, scarily, vast in its possibility. For hours, I just stared at the untouched surface, feeling not anxiety, but expectation. Finally, I mixed a deep blue that captured the exact color of the ocean at dawn. With deliberate brush strokes, I began to create not the past, nor even the present, but a future imagined in all its undefinable glory. At the bottom corner, instead of my usual signature, I painted a small golden cage with its door open and empty. When I finished, I stepped back to admire the work. I simply called it First Day. My phone rang, a number from across the country. It was a curator from a gallery in New York who had seen my exhibition in Seattle. "We're organizing a group show about female resilience," he explained. "Your work would be perfect. Would you be interested?" As I confirmed my interest, I looked at the freshly finished canvas drying in the sun. I thought of the little girl I once was, the woman I had become, and the countless others facing their own cages. "Yes," I replied, the simple word carrying the weight of an entire journey. "I'm definitely interested in the future." From the balcony, the ocean stretched out endlessly to the horizon. The same waters that had witnessed my darkest moments now reflected unlimited possibilities ahead. The hardest moment of my life had become the gateway to my best existence, not because the pain was necessary, but because I finally chose not to let it define me. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. I made a quick call to Madison. "I'm thinking of painting the guest room a bright yellow," I announced. Without preamble. "Michael would hate that," she replied, laughing. "Exactly for that reason," I agreed, already picturing the sunny space. "It's my yellow now.